There are souls who arrive in this world with a strange kind of openness, as if a thin curtain sways between what's seen and what's hidden. You might call them empaths, intuitives, or highly sensitive people. The artist might say they're touched by something divine, the seer might call them oracles. But I'll name them plainly, those who live too close to the veil. For them, the world isn't just what meets the eye, it's also the hum of what lingers beneath, the whispers of what's unspoken. And that, my friends, is both a gift and a heavy load. I've crossed paths with many of these souls. They tread lightly, as if afraid to disturb the air. They listen more than they talk, and they feel things others brush off, a fleeting glance, a shift in the wind, a stranger's sigh. These moments speak to them in ways that defy logic. They're not fragile, they're open. But in a world that prizes toughness and distraction, openness can feel like a wound. Highly sensitive people don't just feel emotions, they're attuned to the unseen currents, the things others bury deep. They sense not only what's felt but what's denied, absorbing the world's unspoken grief like sponges. This isn't just about people, though. It's bigger. These souls are wired to the archetypes, those ancient forces that shape our dreams and stories. Their inner world is alive with symbols, wolves, rivers, shadowed figures, or blazing fires. They dream in myth, but because no one taught them this language, they often feel broken. They're told they're too much, too emotional, too raw, too intense. But hear me, if you're one of these people, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not flawed, you're rare. But you're also at risk. I don't say this lightly. There's a hidden warning woven into the fabric of my work, one I've left like scattered seeds for those who listen. The more sensitive you are, the closer you stand to the unconscious, and the greater the chance it could swallow you whole. The unconscious doesn't sort out what's yours and what isn't, it simply hands you the raw material of the world's pain, its fear, its longing. If you don't know where you end and the world begins, you might mistake its chaos for your own. You might think the heaviness in your chest is your sadness, when it's really the weight of a room, a family, or even a generation. I once met a woman, barely 30, who couldn't shake the feeling of drowning. She'd walk into a crowded place and feel panic that wasn't hers. She'd cry at the sight of a wilting flower or an old photograph. "I'm too sensitive," she said, ashamed. "I can't cope." But her dreams told another story, oceans rising, a faceless guide pulling her to shore, a tree with roots that glowed. She wasn't falling apart, she was a vessel, carrying more than she knew. No one had shown her how to hold it. The danger for the highly sensitive is real. Without grounding, without boundaries, without understanding your own psyche, you risk being lost in the very depths you were born to explore. But there's hope. Sensitivity, when unconscious, breeds suffering. When made conscious, it becomes vision. If you're one of these souls, your work isn't to fit into a world that doesn't see you. You're here to feel what others ignore, to name what others silence. But you can't do this blindly, or you'll burn out. You need to learn the art of being sensitive, and surviving. If you're highly sensitive, you've likely felt it, a moment where the world's weight becomes too much, where the emotions, the dreams, the unseen currents threaten to pull you under. This isn't a flaw, it's a stage. It's what I call the descent, the moment when the unconscious begins to demand your attention. For many, this feels like drowning, depression, anxiety, or a body that aches with no clear cause. Some call it a spiritual emergency. I call it an initiation. The unconscious has chosen you as its vessel, and it's not gentle about it. This stage is where many sensitive souls falter. The dreams grow vivid, tunnels, dark waters, endless staircases. You might feel like you're carrying a grief you can't name or a fear that doesn't fit. I met a young man once, barely out of his teens, who described it like this: "I feel like I'm holding everyone else's pain." He'd dream of crumbling cities, of voices calling from the dark. He thought he was losing his mind. But he wasn't. His sensitivity was tuning into the collective, picking up what others buried. No one had taught him how to separate himself from the chaos. Here's the warning: if you don't face this consciously, you risk being consumed. Some sensitive souls numb themselves, through distraction, denial, or worse. Others fragment, retreating into roles like the helper or the healer to make sense of the overwhelm. But a few, only a few, choose to surrender, not to despair, but to depth. They let themselves fall, not to break, but to transform. This is the sacred work of individuation, the process of becoming whole by meeting the unconscious head-on. The descent isn't just a metaphor. It's a lived experience, raw and real. Your dreams might show you caves, basements, or being buried alive. These aren't threats, they're invitations. They're asking you to face what's hidden, not just in you but in the world. The highly sensitive person doesn't just carry their own wounds, they feel the unspoken pain of the culture, the grief of forgotten stories, the ache of unlived lives. And unless you learn to ground yourself, you'll drift, caught between your own heart and the world's shadow. I worked with a woman who dreamed of falling through the earth, landing in a cavern where a silent figure wove light into her skin. She woke up terrified, thinking it meant death. I told her, this isn't an end, it's a beginning. Your sensitivity is pulling you towards something deeper. That figure in her dream wasn't a threat, it was her deeper self, calling her to wake up. The sensitive soul must learn this: your gift isn't meant to break you, it's meant to remake you. This is where boundaries come in, not walls to keep the world out, but lines to know where you end and others begin. Without them, you absorb everything, every mood, every pain, every unspoken fear. With them, your sensitivity becomes a tool, not a burden. You start to ask, is this mine, when the sadness hits? You learn to feel without fusing, to witness without drowning. Your dreams will guide you here. If you're overgiving, you might see leaking buckets or bleeding wounds. If you're being overwhelmed, you might dream of strangers in your home or unlocked doors. These are your soul's messages. Don't ignore them. The work is to make your sensitivity conscious. Write the dreams. Speak the symbols. Sit with the images and let them teach you. This isn't woo-woo, it's the language of your psyche. And when you start listening, something shifts. The floods in your dreams become rivers. The wounds become scars. The unconscious stops chasing you and starts walking beside you. You're no longer just sensitive, you're becoming a seer. When you begin to listen to your sensitivity, something remarkable happens: the unconscious starts to speak back. For the highly sensitive soul, this is where the journey shifts from survival to creation. Your dreams, once chaotic and overwhelming, begin to take on a new tone. The symbols don't just haunt you, they guide you. Where there were storms, you might now see a path through the rain. Where there were faceless figures, you might meet elders or animals who seem to know you better than you know yourself. This is the unconscious collaborating, responding to your willingness to engage. The highly sensitive person is born with a direct line to this deeper world, but it's not enough to feel it, you have to learn its language. Your dreams are not random. That image of a locked door, a glowing tree, or a child calling your name, they're messages, precise and purposeful. The unconscious speaks in symbols because it's the only way to convey what words can't hold. If you're dreaming of floods, it might mean you're carrying too much of others' emotions. If you see a stranger in your house, it could signal a need for stronger psychic boundaries. Write these down. Speak them aloud. Let them work you. I once worked with a man who dreamed of a wolf circling his bed. He was terrified, thinking it meant danger. But as we explored it, he realized the wolf wasn't threatening him, it was guarding him, urging him to claim his own space. He'd spent years absorbing everyone else's needs, leaving no room for his own. That dream was his soul's way of saying, protect what's yours. The unconscious doesn't just point out problems, it offers solutions, if you're brave enough to listen. This is where discipline comes in. Sensitivity without discernment is a recipe for exhaustion. You have to learn to ask, what's mine? What's not? When you feel a wave of anger or grief, pause. Is it yours, or are you picking up the room's unspoken tension? The highly sensitive are like antennas, tuned to frequencies others miss. But without focus, you'll drown in static. Boundaries aren't about shutting the world out, they're about letting your own truth in. They let you feel deeply without losing yourself. Your body helps here. It's not just a vessel, it's a compass. Notice when your chest tightens, when your stomach knots, when your energy drops. These aren't random, they're signals. A woman I knew would get headaches every time she visited her family. She thought it was stress, but her dreams showed a house with no walls. Her sensitivity was picking up their unvoiced conflicts, and her body was sounding the alarm. Once she learned to set boundaries, psychic and practical, the headaches faded. Her sensitivity didn't vanish, it became clearer, sharper, like a blade honed for precision. Over time, the unconscious becomes an ally. The dreams shift from warnings to invitations. The river that once flooded your sleep now flows with purpose. The figures that scared you start to feel like guides. This is the turning point. You're no longer just a sponge for the world's pain. You're a mirror, reflecting what's hidden with clarity and care. But this requires you to stay rooted, to keep returning to the question, who am I, apart from what I feel? The answer lies in the self, not the ego, not the roles you play, but the deeper whole that holds your light and shadow. This is the paradox of the sensitive soul. The more you embrace your gift, the more you realize it's not about you. Your sensitivity is a bridge between the seen and unseen, but you can't cross it alone. The unconscious is your partner, and it's waiting for you to show up, not as a victim, but as a participant in your own becoming. As a highly sensitive soul, when you start to engage with the unconscious, something profound begins to unfold. You realize you're not just living a life, you're living a myth. This isn't a poetic flourish, it's a truth that hums in your bones. The sensitive person is born closer to the membrane where personal story meets collective story, where your dreams weave into the larger tapestry of humanity's soul. You've always felt like an outsider, not because you don't belong, but because you sense what the world has forgotten. Every life is a symbolic journey. This realization changes how you move through the world. Your sensitivity stops being a weight and becomes a compass. You begin to track your feelings, not just as emotions but as messages. When sadness washes over you, you don't just ask, why do I feel this? You ask, what is this showing me? What archetype is stirring? Your nervous system isn't just reacting, it's reading the unseen, acting as an antenna for what's buried. A man I knew once felt rage every time he saw a certain news story. He thought he was personal, but his dreams showed a warrior standing in ashes, sword raised. He was tapping into a deeper cultural anger, a call for justice. His sensitivity was oracular, pointing to something beyond himself. This is where the world starts to feel charged, almost alive. Every encounter, every dream, every shiver down your spine carries a hidden meaning. A woman I worked with described it as living in a story that's writing itself. She'd meet strangers who'd say things that echoed her dreams or find objects, a feather, a coin, that felt were meant for her. This isn't coincidence, it was the archetypal field waking up. The sensitive soul, when they align with their deeper self, begins to see these moments as signposts in their myth. But this stage isn't always gentle, it can feel like walking through a tightrope over a storm. You're starting to see too much, feel too much, and the world doesn't always welcome what you know. This is the archetype of the wounded seer, the one who bears witness to what others bury. It's not just about feeling deeply, it's about carrying truth in a world that often prefers comfort. You sense the ghosts in every room, the unspoken grief of a friend, the silenced dreams of a stranger. Your dreams might show you what's coming, a storm, a birth, a loss, and you're not always believed when you speak it. Your dreams will change again here. The dark forests become paths. The caves turn into wombs. The figures that once chased you now walk beside you, elders, animals, ancestors. I once worked with a young soul who dreamed of a hawk landing on her arm, its eyes like hers, steady and fierce. She'd spent years hiding her sensitivity, afraid of being too much. That hawk was her soul saying, "Claim your sight. You're ready." The unconscious no longer sees you as passive, it sees you as initiated. This is where you might feel alone, even as you grow. Most of the world is still asleep, caught in projection or numbness, clinging to personas. You can't resent them, they're part of the myth, too, just at a different stage. Your task is to convince or save them, it's to embody your truth so fully that your presence alone becomes a mirror. A sensitive soul who's made it this far is a quiet force. Their silence carries weight, their gaze reveals. They live as if every moment is scripture, every pain an alchemical fire forging them whole. The warning here is subtle but real: don't let the world pull you back into its shallows. The old roles, helper, peacemaker, empath, will beckon, offering a false sense of belonging. But you're beyond roles now. You're a mystic in the making, a weaver of meaning. Your sensitivity is just a trait, it's a sacred tool, honed by the descent, sharpened by the unconscious. You're not here to fit in, you're here to remind the world of what it's forgotten, that we are all living myths, and the soul is the storyteller. For the highly sensitive soul, the journey doesn't end with seeing the myth you're living, it deepens into the delicate art of returning to the world without losing what you found. This is the hardest part, the quietest initiation. You've descended into the unconscious, faced its symbols, and begun to embody your deeper self. But the world hasn't changed, it still hums with noise, distraction, and denial. It will tempt you to slip back into old roles, to dull your sensitivity, to explain away the sacred with words too small for mystery. The final warning is this: your sensitivity is no longer about you. It's the bridge through which your self meets the world. This return isn't about retreating or dominating, it's about witnessing. You've become a carrier of symbols, a bearer of the unseen. Your dreams, once a source of overwhelm, now offer instruction. Your body, once a sponge for pain, now signals truth with precision. You tremble, but not with fear, with presence. I once knew a woman who, after years of feeling crushed by crowds, learned to walk through them with a quiet center. She'd sense the unspoken tensions but choose what to engage. Her dreams showed a lantern in her hands, lighting paths others couldn't see. She wasn't just sensitive anymore, she was a guide. Your role now is subtle but profound, to re-enchant the world with meaning. Not through preaching or dogma, but through being. Your silence becomes a prayer, your presence a mirror. A man I worked with described it like this: I used to absorb everyone's pain. Now, I just see it, and somehow that's enough. He'd dream of standing in a field, storms raging around him, but he was untouched. His sensitivity had become a gift of clarity, he could hold space for the world's chaos without drowning in it. This doesn't mean you're above the world's pain. You still feel it deeply, the grief of a stranger, the weight of a dying tree, the ache of a culture's forgotten soul. But you've learned to discern, what's yours, what's theirs, what's collective. Your boundaries, once shaky, are now sovereign. You don't carry the world, you reflect it. This is the alchemy of the sensitive soul, turning overwhelm into vision, suffering into wisdom. Your dreams might show this shift: rivers now flow where floods once raged, scars form where wounds once bled. The unconscious sees you as a partner, not a vessel to fill. But here's the paradox: the more you embody this, the more you may feel alone. The world isn't ready for someone who lives this awake. People may lean on you, project onto you, or pull away when your gaze sees too much. Don't take it personally, they're navigating their own myths, often unconsciously. Your task isn't to fix them but to live so authentically that your presence stirs something in them. A sensitive soul who's walked through their own darkness and emerged whole is a quiet revolution. They can't be manipulated or diminished. Their life becomes a symbol, not in metaphor but in truth. I worked with a young person who dreamed of a fire that didn't burn them. They'd spent years hiding their sensitivity, fearing it made them weak. But in the dream, they walked through flames, carrying a seed. That seed was their self, ready to root in the world. They began to notice how their presence shifted rooms, people softened, truths surfaced, silences grew meaningful. They weren't doing anything grand, they were simply being. This is the sensitive soul's service, not to save the world, but to mirror its forgotten depths. The danger now is subtle. The world will ask you to simplify, to perform, to fit back into its boxes. Resist. Your sensitivity is your medicine, not just for you, but for those who encounter you. You're a reminder that the soul is real, that dreams carry truth, that feeling deeply is a sacred act. Stay rooted in your myth, your silence, your knowing. You're not too much, you're exactly what the world needs, even if it doesn't know it yet. You've walked the spiral path, highly sensitive soul, through the veil, the descent, the myths, and the return. Now you stand at the threshold of your true work, living as medicine. Not in the sense of healing everyone or fixing the world, but in embodying a wholeness that ripples outward. Your sensitivity, once a source of pain, is now a refined instrument. You're no longer fragile, you're feral, rooted in a self that holds both light and shadow. You're no longer overwhelmed, you're responsive, attuned to what's real. Few survive this journey unchanged, but those who do, like you, return as something more, a mirror, a myth, a quiet force of truth. This final movement is about presence, not performance. The world will pull at you, demanding you explain your sensitivity, justify your depth, or shrink to fit its shallow molds. But you're beyond that now. You know the self isn't an idea or a role, it's a living field, ancient and luminous, that draws strength from the unconscious. Your dreams reflect this. Where there were once floods, there's now a steady river. Where there were wounds, there's a scar that tells a story. The figures in your dreams, guides, animals, ancestors, don't just visit, they walk with you, affirming you're no longer alone in your myth. Your sensitivity is now a gift of precision. You notice when emotions aren't yours, when a room's tension isn't your burden, when a dream is speaking for the collective. I once knew a man who could walk into a meeting and feel the unspoken conflicts like a storm. He used to collapse under it, thinking it was his fault. Now, he'd pause, breathe, and choose what to address. His dreams showed a lighthouse, steady amid crashing waves. He'd become a beacon, not by doing more, but by seeing clearly. This is your power now, to witness without absorbing, to feel without fusing. Your service to the world is simple yet profound, you re-enchant it by living as if meaning matters. Your silence carries weight, your gaze unveils, your presence stirs the soul in others. A woman I worked with described it as being a tuning fork. She'd sit with friends, and without saying much, they'd start sharing truths they'd buried. Her dreams showed her holding a mirror, not to herself but to the sky. She wasn't saving anyone, she was reflecting what they'd forgotten. This is the sensitive soul's alchemy, turning the world's denial into remembrance. The warning here is quiet but vital: don't let the world dim your light. It will try, offering comfort in exchange for your depth, applause in exchange for your truth. Stay feral. Stay whole. Your sensitivity isn't a burden, it's a sacred thread connecting the seen to the unseen. You're not here to carry the world's pain but to hold it in witness, to name what's buried, to dream what's possible. Your body is your temple, your dreams your scripture, your pain the fire that forged you. You serve by staying true to that. If you've made it this far, know this: you're not too much. You're what the world forgot it needed. You're the medicine, not because you heal everyone, but because you live as if the soul is real. Your life is a myth unfolding, a story that reminds others of their own. So go now, not back into the noise, but forward into presence. Let your dreams guide, your silence speak, your sensitivity shine. You are the mirror reflecting the world's soul, the myth weaving its meaning, the medicine it's been waiting for. And in that, you are free.